You can see exactly what they're seeing. So YouTube pops up. Your base position is on that screen. When we've done.
It's not a quiz. Yeah.
It's so the table with the little additional camera is not set up.
You live in the villages? Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. So you live on this side. Sure.
Yes.
Yeah. And everybody.
No, I don't know. Oh,
Yeah.
because it can it's really sorry.
Yeah. We also have the.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Oh. Right. Margin. Landscape. Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's all blown up. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. In years. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, no. Oh, okay. Super use case.
Yeah.
Honestly, but
Yeah. Yeah.
probably. Wow. I wish I had mine.
Yeah.
It's huge. I can get it.
Okay.
Yeah. Gotcha. The river. It's some use.
Oh, yeah.
It's part I saw.
Yeah.
Just from it's like, yeah.
Yeah.
I know the University Trail. We worked on it. In the afternoon. I know it was the trail. It's trail. Resistance. Right?
Yeah.
Just all, you know.
Yeah.
Right?
How are you?
Yeah.
Good. That's good.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, no, she was lovely. Yeah, no, I know the whole. These are all remnants and trails and ideas and core. It's a camp, let's make it count. Perfect. Plan finished. I think it's better than perfect plan. This is going to be a fire. So that's you're asking. Yeah, we decided. So I'm hoping that more communities are eligible. Northern side. We talked about it back then. We did it. Yeah. No, that's a Oh, yeah, no.
Yes, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, probably same. I know, it's like, it's scary to have sort of video. Yeah, you can, I mean, you can get ready to do anything, but you kind of have to, like, yeah, it's totally up to you. It's so cool. Yeah, so see, all that things, like,
Yeah. Well, I mean, not.
All right, we're gonna get started. If anyone would like to find a seat.
Let's go see.
So welcome to the public kickoff for the Kingston Community Preservation Plan. My name is Julie Noble, and I am the Sustainability Coordinator for the City of Kingston. And right off the bat, I would like to introduce our partners with the Hudson Valley Language Justice Collaborative, Roxana Guerra and Veronica Martinez Cruz.
Mi nombre es Verónica Martínez, junto con mi compañera Roxana, formamos parte del equipo de justicia del lenguaje.
Hello, my name is Roxana and Veronica, and together we form part of the Language Justice Team.
Esta reunión será interpretada simultáneamente entre inglés y español. Pedimos que todos usen el equipo de interpretación al no entender el inglés y el español. Si aún no ha recogido equipo, pase por nuestra mesa. Pedimos que la gente firme la entrada y salida del equipo, así que no olvide rellenar el formulario que hay en la mesa cuando recoge el transmisor y los audífonos que va a utilizar.
This meeting will be interpreted simultaneously between English and Spanish. We ask that everyone use that interpretation equipment unless you understand both English and Spanish. If you haven't already picked up the equipment, please stop at our table now. We are asking that folks sign the equipment in and out. So please don't forget to fill out the form on the table as you collect the transmitter and headset you'll be using.
So, I don't know, does anyone want any members to just so we can work this? So, okay. So, estas son algunas de las maneras en que todos podemos ayudar con el compromiso a crear un espacio multilingüe durante esta reunión.
These are some ways in which we can support our commitment to create a multilingual space during this gathering.
Por favor, hable a un paso moderado. Si necesitamos que hable más despacio, usaremos esta señal. Invitamos a todos a hacerlo con nosotros. Practiquemos.
Please speak at a moderate pace. If we need to slow down when it's hand signal, we encourage all of you to also use the hand signal. Let's all practice.
Thank you. Si tenemos dificultad escuchándole y necesitamos que alce la voz, usaremos esta señal.
If we're having difficulty hearing you and you need to speak more loudly, folks are speaking too softly, we'll make this hand signal.
Por favor, hable una persona a la vez, para que los intérpretes no tengan que escoger a cuál voz interpretar.
Please one person speak at a time, so that the interpreters don't have to choose one to interpret or demonstrating hand signal.
Por último, por favor, devuelva el equipo al mundo del evento a la mesa donde lo recogió e indíquelo en el formulario. Esto nos ayuda a asegurar que el equipo estará disponible para la próxima vez que se necesite.
Finally, please return the equipment at the end of the event to the table where you picked it up from, and note that the one on the form. This helps us ensure that the equipment will be available the next time we need it.
Gracias por su compromiso a la justicia del lenguaje.
Thank you for your commitment to plan and language justice.
And so we will begin our meeting here. Again, my name is Julie Noble. Thank you so much for joining us today. As a note, this meeting is being recorded and it is also being live streamed. So there are folks watching us from home as well.
1%.
What?
1%.
Lots of people are watching us. They can watch us at any time because it's being recorded. So I would like to recognize our funding partner, the grant award from the city of Kingston, a grant award to the city from the New York State Environmental Protection Fund through the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation's Hudson River Estuary Program. And Ingrid Heichel is our project manager. She is here with us tonight. We appreciate the funding support and we appreciate you being here. So I'm going to walk us through tonight's agenda. First, I'm going to introduce everyone to the city staff that are helping to coordinate this effort, along with our consultants. And I will also introduce the members of our project advisory committee. Then we will present an overview of the elements of our conservation community preservation plan. And after that presentation, we will break out into small groups around the tables. We will work together to mark up the maps, and we will share ideas for priority areas for preservation that should be considered in the development of the plan. Each table will share some highlights of what is on their maps, and their discussions and our consulting team will collect the maps and notes from this meeting, and that information will be considered as public input for the community preservation plan. First, I'd like to go through some introductions. Again, my name is Julie. I am the project manager on this project. Joining me this evening is Emily Flynn, who is the co-project manager and the director of health and wellness for the city. Our consulting team includes John Bean and Dana Brady of BN Planning and Design and Rick Letter-Barnes of Upstate GIS. This same consulting team helped the city complete our first open space plan a few years ago, and we're so pleased that they're here to assist us with completing this community preservation plan. I'm also very pleased to introduce members of our project advisory committee. We have a very robust project advisory committee, and we have a number of different members here tonight. This is a list of half of the members that are on the advisory committee, and the other half here. Anyone who's on the project advisory committee, if you could just put your hand in the air so folks can see who's on this project advisory committee. And on this committee, we have folks that are representing different historic commissions, environmental commissions, recreation commissions, planning areas, regional organizations, local organizations, and many others. So we're excited to have this robust project advisory committee. I want to give you an idea of how we came to be here. So the city of Kingston and many different departments have done an incredible amount of work so far in planning. And if you are familiar with Kingston, you know that we are a city of plans. The work that we are doing here with the community preservation plan builds upon the work we have done thus far. In particular, the Conservation Advisory Council, my sustainability office, the Climate Smart Kingston Commission, and a number of other commissions have worked on plans that you see here to help us get where we are. The process thus far has started with a natural resources inventory, where we evaluated the resources we have at a city level, things like rivers, forests, recreational areas, and other locations to map our resources. Just map them. And that started the process of identifying what we have. From there, we brought on BN Planning and Design to do our open space plan. And that open space plan, there's a copy of it on the table, was put together to take those resources and identify areas of concern to create a vision and goals for preservation. You'll see on your table a map of the vision plan for the open space plan. And it identified large tracts of land that we would set goals to preserve for forests, for river access, for parkland, for other forms of environmental and cultural preservation. But the open space plan did not identify to the parcel level preservation goals and intent. For example, it might look at a 60-acre joint habitat on the Rondo, but it didn't say we would like this specific address to be preserved in this specific way. We are now moving to that next level, which is this community preservation plan. The point of this plan, which John will walk us through, will build on how we will enact the community and cultural preservation of the plans that we've put together thus far. So I'm going to call John Weeder to the table here, and he will walk us through the community preservation plan.
Evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. We're so glad to be here tonight. Especially such a big evening. We really appreciate your participation. So, what is a community preservation plan? I think Julie explained it pretty well. So, the big idea that Julie had mentioned is to refine and advance the city's open space plan. So we will be appreciate your help tonight as we identify potential priority areas for preservation. So this may include the preservation of historic places, properties, may include public access to the waterfront, natural areas, expansion of parks, expanding the city's recreation trail system. And so one unique aspect of the community preservation plan is that it provides an opportunity to secure an ongoing source of funding for the city. That's authorized by some neighboring legislation from New York State. And I'll share a little bit more of this as we go on. So, some of the specific areas outlined in the legislation for a community preservation plan. These items on the screen: parks, nature preserves, wildlife refuges, green belts, recreation areas, lands of exceptional scenic value, wetlands, aquifer recharge areas, historic places and properties, rare endangered habitats, unique threatened ecosystems, public access to land for recreational use, rivers, streams, waterways, wetlands, and shorelines, viable agricultural lands. All these categories of resources. You may find a property in the city has all these aspects, right? And you may find there's a property that has really one aspect that's really important. For example, there may be a place of historic importance that doesn't have wetlands, doesn't have habitat, but it's really important. So that's what we hope to get out this evening is your insight into some of those aspects. So the community preservation plan is focused on natural cultural resources. So because of that, and the legislation that provides for it, it limits what it can do and what it cannot do. So it cannot use to identify priorities for housing, sewers, stormwater infrastructure improvements, road infrastructure improvements, those kind of things. It doesn't mean those are not important. It just means that this particular aspect is not covered by the legislation in this plan. But just because these are not included at this time, it doesn't mean these are important. It doesn't mean the city, you all, it's not important, they're not important, not being addressed. You know, for example, the city has been very active, I think as most of you all know, for many, many years, advocating for diverse housing, basic stock, affordable housing. The city has an anti-displacement strategy, there's a tiny homes project. There's a lot of other projects and partners working on that aspect. As you all know, there's infrastructure improvements underway. On a Broadway, something bikeway, there's a lot of things going on. State parks, there's a lot of things going on. That's focusing tonight on the specific aspects of community preservation. But there is information on the city's Engage case website. There's a lot of good information if folks want to look at that further. I think, Julie, you covered a lot of the reasons, a lot of the rationale behind why preservation plan for Kingston. And I think there's a lot of important reasons: building local resiliency, climate change and severe weather, protecting and expanding your urban forest, help keep temperatures cool in the summer. I think David today could appreciate shade, right? Stormwater and watershed management, a lot of different reasons to promote the preservation plan. And interestingly, the city is blessed with a lot of waterfront, right? The Hudson, the Round Island, Lake Sopus, and a lot of history. When I was going through the town today, I was almost, I'm going to say overwhelmed. I was overwhelmed by the beauty of the city's historic resources and how rich a heritage we all have here. It's really, and what's nice is you can see that people treasure it, right? And really, it's wonderful to see. So we all worked on the open space plan, and there's the community preservation plan. What are some of the differences? Well, the open space plan, as Julie mentioned, it's flexible. It has flexible requirements, whereas the community preservation plan is unique legislative requirements for that. Open space plan is combined in general areas over several parcels. Community preservation plan is going to identify values associated with every specific real property parcel in the city that is considered important. The open space plan, we cannot secure funding through the mechanisms that are allowed in community preservation. And so the community preservation plan is a unique funding opportunity, which we have to time. So our project schedule, we're going to show you that detailed chart, but the big idea is we're working with in the fall that we draft plan, it will be shared engineering after the advisory committee and the consultant team work on it. And toward the end of the year, we'd like to hope to have a final plan leading to the state for adoption. There's a pretty robust outreach process that's been outlined. We have there's an online questionnaire on the Kingston website. We have an online mapping tool that I will show you on this, but I'm nervous about getting the presentation there. So we can get onto that from the Kingston website. And there's going to be there's additional public meetings that will be held, 2 more public meetings. Also, the staff and some of the advisory will be having meetings and be engaged in different community activities as well. This is an image from the vision map from the open space plan, and this plan is part of the foundation. It's a starting point for the community preservation plan. That plan also had an evaluation of some of the resources. We included a scoring system for rating the resources. We created overlay maps, looked for co-occurrences of resources, and these were the bigger categories: water resources, ecological resources, cultural and historic resources, and agricultural resources. So some of the main elements of a community preservation plan, these are customized to the city's goals and your resources. So land parcels will be scored. We're going to set up a rating system for priorities. The plan will also include an evaluation of alternative ways, land use tools to help preserve these resources, things like zoning, things like transfer development rights, purchase of conservation easements, things like that. just a little side note, used to be on the board of directors of the Preservation Foundation in my town, Saratoga Springs. And back in the day, there was funding available from New York State for facade program to help renovate the facades of Broadway and Saratoga. But in order to give money to companies, they couldn't give the money for nothing, if you would. So the owners, in exchange for cash to help fix up the facades, they provided a conservation easement to this Preservation Foundation's work. And that easement basically said, we agreed to keep this historic facade intact for a term of the easement was 30 years. That was a catalyst for renovating and revitalization of Saratoga Springs back in the 80s. Because that money helped. Was money was hard for them. So there's a lot of different tools. And again, the point is the plan. So after completing the preservation plan, there's a unique funding opportunity for the city. So Kingston and those other Ulster County communities have been able to raise funds to protect these kind of places through a local real estate transfer tax that we enabled through the legislation, community preservation. So authorization for such a tax would be a future event. That would be required for the city voters to recommend the process after the city adopted a local law toward that. So the tax revenues that come into that fund come through this through the closing of the real property transfer. It's basically transfer. Okay, and the city could establish how much of that transfer fee would be exempted from the transfer. So, for example, typically a community would exempt any property under the median of the property, so they don't want to be taxed above. And they also established a rate, maybe 1%, they have whatever the percentage is. And the idea is that that would be paid for by the purchaser of the property. And so if you're a city resident and taxpayer, you would not be paying that tax. Unlike the local bond, the city bonds for open space or bonds for public improvements. Typically, every tax parcel pays that. It retires the cost of that bond taxes. It's an added value tax. So I think it's kind of it's a way to have the folks who are buying into the city to help support these amenities the city provides. So this is, this just was approved in 2019 and Ulster County to the Hudson Valley Community Preservation Act. And so this is a new thing. I think it's important to know too, this will come later. We have to have a plan first, right? Once we have a plan, we have a priorities, the city could decide to move forward with that setting up preservation. Your neighbor Blue Falls recently approved such a fund. Some of the other considerations are that we're looking at is this, for example, the city has a draft new zoning ordinance that's recently put together, it's been made public. And so this is an image from that map. What's interesting about this zoning, and we're not going to get into a lot of detail, but there are categories in this zoning that have different types of intensity development from, highly, like downtown type of, more intense urban development, all the way down out to what they call transect scale, where you have a conservation level, the values of the land are such that the highest and best use is more conservation. So you can see the attenuation there, the green, the dark green, and the lighter green are those categories. And that's something that can help inform this process as well. So in a moment we'll be taking up the markers and we'll be having tables marking them up and looking for your input. And one of the things we like to do is you sit around the table and you have a conversation and ask that one person volunteer to kind of represent your table, present something came up with and talked about. The table set up as we have 6 different tables. We have table 1 over here, which is open space habitat focused conversation. Table 2 here, it's going to focus on recreation and trails, parks, those kind of conversations. Table 3, we targeted that to be focused on historic resources, cultural resources. Table 4 over here is urban agriculture, community gardens. Table 5 is water resources. Table 6 is general, including scenic resources, any topic really that is not anything you want to talk about in that table. Okay. And if you want, you can feel free to move around tables if you have one idea, for example, in the parks, you want to get on the table, and then you want to talk about habitats or something else, feel free to do so. So on each table, you'll find a citywide map that looks like this. Okay, and we've got the entire city map, and you'll see there's different, there's color coded for the different categories. Okay, these include ball fields, parks, vacant parcels, tax parcels, government, historic districts and sites, the Empire State Trail, railroads, abandoned historic railroads, roundabout Kingston Point trolley line, wetlands, and year subsequent flooding. We also have the second map, is a zoomed in map of Central Kingston as well. Okay. We have markers for your use. If you have a good sense of smell or supposedly scented, thanks, Dana. We have sticky notes if you want to, write some ideas or explain, what you find out. Additional thoughts. Okay. So I'm getting this ready for the end of the meeting. Okay.
So before we split up into our tables, I want to be sure that everyone understands and has a grasp
of what a community preservation plan is. And if anyone has any questions before we break up into the tables, what we're looking to do is we're going to gather information from everyone tonight through the survey and through the map and through using information of existing data we have with our maps, the zoning information, and all the other factors we have to create a matrix that says, if a parcel has this feature, and this feature, it gets this many points. And when we will then give each parcel in the city of Kingston a point value, and that point value will then determine if we set up the fund, how do we preserve that property. That's the gist of the entire community preservation plan and fund. So tonight, we're interested in gathering from you what specific things we should highlight as a priority in these different areas. And these areas are the ones that are enabling us to be working on due to the legislation. Are there any questions as a whole about the process? Yes.
Can you define historic?
I'm going to stop sharing the screen so that the two viewers.
Sure. John, do you want to try to?
Sure, I can. I just want to check the rules. Can I also phone a friend? I'll do my best to remember. Historic is it's a property that has a designation as a state or national recognition as a historic place. Okay? But let's say that if you know that has historic value, that you believe would qualify for that, we could let us know, because there's nothing stopping the city in the future from saying, oh yeah, there's properties that we want to add to our local register. The city could do that. So,
And it could also be, we could also identify or choose to prioritize parcels in proximity to historic places. So we as a municipality will determine the prioritization of what we think is the most valuable. And so if we think that, you know, every parcel adjacent to an already established historic parcel is valuable for inherent reasons, we could put higher points on those properties, for example. Ingrid, did you want to add anything else on that? Ingrid, who's our project manager, has also done this in another community.
I was going to say, like, the Pine Street burial ground.
Right.
It's not certified
Yep.
historic, but it's also one of many examples in Kingston of historic
Yes.
that aren't certified.
Yes, so that is, the Pine Tree Burial Ground is like an exact specific parcel that, this exact process, that's why we're doing it, for parcels like that. Like that would rise to the top for priority for historic.
so please make sure that makes it high.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that,
Okay,
the cemetery.
right, yeah. So the parcels that are already like known historic, we're trying to capture things at this point that haven't been captured elsewhere. So, you know, if there's already a community garden in a place, if it's not a parkland and we feel like we want to preserve it as community garden in perpetuity, we would have to give that a high priority. Or if there's a parcel in the city where we think should be a community garden, we would give that a higher priority. Or for instance, for trails, we know where there are existing trails, but maybe you think there's another place where we should have a trail of some sort. And then telling us that, so that that linear set of parcels would get higher priority for those trails. Or if we have a habitat corridor that is parkland, but there's continuing habitat of the same type, but it's not currently preserved, we could prioritize those locations to continue the habitat corridor. Is this making sense to folks? Or like a water resource, maybe there's a vernal pool somewhere on a property that we haven't preserved, or there's a wetland for wetland migration. So there's areas along our waterfront that may not be preserved right now, but we know that with sea level rise and wetland migration, those could be a priority for us. So that's what we're looking to do. And then if we establish the fund, this plan would have a recommendation for each one of those parcels, you know, that would say, for 101 Wilson Avenue, we've identified there's a vernal pool there, and our best course of action could be an easement on that, or whatever. And so we'll get to that level, but we need to understand what the community wants, so we can get there. Other questions?
Yeah, so is this prioritization part of the unique legislative requirements that you, I mean, if you expound a little more on those
Sure.
requirements?
So per the enabling legislation on the county level, and not every county has this legislation, but we do. There are 3 things the city has to do. We have to adopt a local law that establishes the real estate transfer tax. And in that transfer tax, which we would establish, as John was saying, the percentage of the tax and the threshold of the sale value that would fall under that tax. We need to adopt a local law establishing the fund. We need to establish the real estate transfer tax. And we need to complete a community preservation plan. We are doing the complete the community preservation plan part, because the plan informs the rest. The plan will be completed by this fall, and the city will then, we will present this to the Common Council for adoption that will complete one of those things. In order for anything else to happen, to establish the fund or the real estate transfer tax, an entity that is not the city of Kingston, so I am not able to campaign or advocate to move it forward, but an entity outside of the government itself will need to establish a referendum on the next time there's an election, which will not likely be this November, or likely be next November. So every member of the community would have to vote as to whether or not to create this real estate transfer tax by referendum. And if the community votes for it, then that will establish what the percentage of the tax is and what the threshold is. Is it, every property that sells for more than 150,000, 250,000, 350,000, whatever the threshold will be, the community will establish that and the percentage of the tax. And that fund would be established in the municipality. So our government would set up that fund and an advisory committee that is established by the government, which would also be established through the local law. An advisory committee would then take our completed preservation plan and say, okay, we've got this ranking, and every parcel has a ranking, and a parcel could have a ranking of 0, right? So if there's a parcel right now, like our urban core might not have anything that meets preservation at all. And so parcels can have a ranking of 0. We didn't give it any points for anything, so we're not going to do anything there. But the advisory committee would then say, okay, in 2023, this fund brought in $1 million. I have no idea. $1 million, right? And so according to our community preservation plan, our top priority is 101 Wilson Avenue. We're going to use $450,000 to do this action at 101 Wilson Avenue.
It can be on private property or public, like
That's every property, private or public. Yes,
So the point system, you can talk about that.
sure.
Higher priorities.
Yes.
As you move down to the lower numbers, are those just ones that if the funds keep coming, then you move down the list, or what's the process?
No, that's, so the question is, what are the points about scoring, what's the value of that plan, and then what would be the fund, right? So the fund would be, the resources are going to be limited, right? So let's say there's a resource money now available, and there will be a process to what you want to do. The point of this work is to try to do some of the most important things, right? So a property, let's say, for example, if one of the goals is to protect forest land in the city for habitat, that's important. So the point system, the priority of identifying properties that have the best forests in the city, high values, right? Maybe contiguous property versus something that's marginal. So that's the point system. You may want to connect to, let's say, for example, recreational trail. Maybe you want someone tonight says, here's a corridor, I'm going to go from here to the mountain, right? So that properties along that route would be higher priority, right? That becomes important. So there'll be a whole separate process after the set priorities. The open space plan, this work will make it easier for that to be done. So you get the values, right? So like the burial grounds that might need attention that these funds can be used to protect properties like that. Easements not in the center.
And so the fund is established through the taxes and real estate taxes?
Right.
Okay, and so that would be a continuous fund.
Yes, in perpetuity. Other questions?
Is there a way or example of where a privately held property that may already be well reserved by private wealth doesn't receive funds for that reason, like it's being maintained and upheld. Say it's on the historic register, with these big dots,
Right.
but it's held by an entity that is already protecting it and able to protect it with private funds. Is there a way to sort of ensure that that's not getting this public money? Because there's already private funds protecting it as an asset.
Right, so the question is, what if a property already has a private, or someone other than, let's say, the city, protecting the resources on the historic site, for example? Right, so that, in other words, what I would say, I would separate this process from the implementation. This process, that property should be on the map if it's important. Say, this is a really great property. However, later on, when it comes down to the implementation committee, maybe you're just going to make a decision. They'll say, well, look, we talked to the folks. That's not at any risk. However, this property over here, right, is at risk, or it's an opportunity to do something. And so that would be the priority. That's the importance of the priorities. But for now, what we're trying to do is identify properties that already have some protection already here. But so we're looking for, those values to come out and help us with those values. Yeah.
Other questions?
I'm thinking too, we might want to consolidate some of the tables. We probably don't need some tables, So,
Yeah, I mean, folks really, everyone's kind of spread out the way they are now. As far as I'm concerned, you can kind of stay where you are and chat at your table. And if one person at the table could just take notes, and we will float around to help to answer any questions. Right now, there seems like there's at least one person that represents the pack at each table. So you go ahead and identify yourself and go ahead. So thank you. And we are going to reconvene in a little bit to kind of bring up to the front kind of the main points that were discussed at your table, so that we can hear what everyone else's groups worked on. All right.
I'm Ted. Hi. I'm on the Conservation Advisory Council, and I used to work for the Kings of St. Trust. And some of these Yeah. I live over on Bay. Near. It's just on the other side of Main Street. Okay. Yeah. It's parallel to Washington, between Main Street. You know where Lucas Pet Supply is? It's a pet store, Lucas Pet Supply. I live 1 block. South. Yeah. Okay. the stadium's here.
I understand why.
And
Yes.
No, this is true. That I feel like this cross these road checks. No, I'm talking about Green Hill, where the so high school, I was there. And all day, teenagers cross through because this is a these only there should be some
It should be. Yeah. You should be. I live on the other side. It's like it's really exciting.
Really? They put up. But they. Finish this end.
At some point, I would have just put up.
You know, like the roads here, you can walk under the bridge here, and the street.
And it's like teenagers, you know.
What's that street that just doesn't stop? Yeah. It would be, I think it's long and some people could have submitted it. But really along that stretch, it's you know, like I see some so that's it. I would love to see community garden. So that's right.
To me, it's about a value spot. You know, so to me, it's got money in it.
Also, like twice a year, some of you doctors stretch any weird.
I mean, this is where I really like, are we talking about
It's a hard question.
We're not saying this.
No, isn't it interesting that like that's what's like primary one of the tree? Sort of in Kingston. And it's also in this area. So it's interesting. It's interesting.
You know, what would be nice because we have an integration here, central. I see.
Yeah.
Saying that, yeah. And that's what it's called, the statutes.
I mean, I use this for. Also, for. I worked over. Like I don't need and you can turn around. The other thing I would say about this.
Yeah, there's one.
It says abandoned historic road. So it's still considered.
Well, so some parts of it are so this one's this is still
Yeah, but this.
so yeah, so let's mark this tree. Yeah.
I've seen some. See, there's a trail. That, yeah, it goes all the way out to the curb. I've been jogging on it. I've seen deer, all kinds of birds. Yeah, I've seen bear.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they were doing a street.
And all that is within. Yeah. All right. Right.
Yeah, I can't even place that.
Yeah. Even some signage, like these are native. Or like.
Yeah, so it's like box top and the tree, right here. Yeah, and it's not empty again. So I just.
I know bears come every year, at least once a year, a bear comes through here. It's in the state. And also back here. You'll see bears. There's certain people in the back of the neighborhood, they actually.
Recreational area, this one makes it all water, and it doesn't have to be like full of. Somewhere where like the ocean or something. And yeah. It's gathering. Yeah. I would say the same thing about this area. This section right here. Yeah.
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 I almost feel like at that, with this, it would be better to. Like, yeah, well, this dance, it's, people are crossing through here all the time, and it should all be, like, see.
At this intersection right here. What is this? South Border. You know, the south boundary field where it's and right here, there's this shady. There's no stream, and there's like, this where I see. But, and there's a tiny little bunch there, those like drops on I think that's just for the beast area.
more towards, Crossville along Wilbur here, but south of Wilbur, going towards the for that freshwater resources.
Other places.
Yeah.
Yeah, just open space. Space, so it's yeah, sure. Yeah. And regularly, we start from like the discussion. I love that, that's great. I think it's just water access area and it'd be nice if it's bigger and more accessible. I mean, it's kind of a dangerous place to walk through because there's like. Yeah,
It's not that clear, not that something, not that something went in the way. And then they should, it's just, and then that's the way it should.
yeah, no, just no.
That's what I'm saying. But people really take like right in here, that's a part.
Yeah,
But there's multiple sorry.
Sometimes it's easier. The creative. It's much easier to write down this than I've done or write it on the broad.
Well, they would know. But did you, how did you know?
You would only know because I worked on it.
That's fine. But they need to. And then also, they need to make for some people, they really can't drive.
Yeah, like you cross it to Sterling, so there's short circuit.
All the time. Yeah. It's like about an hour. They
Yeah.
I don't remember because I haven't been for like 8 years. But I remember taking easy, never.
So that's right. Public transportation is very expensive. Get
Yeah.
Yeah. Are they still, they think that they're, I don't know, maybe. That's not hard, that's like pretty.
Yeah. So the hospital runs it. It's just so I guess that's sort of like. So, yeah.
That's employees. So it's what about employees living in a certain housing that they have to work. Oh, I see. Sorry. Oh, exemption, like, oh, yes. Okay, bye-bye. Thank you. Haven't demonstrated yet. That's great.
Yeah. Which is great. It's like a capital that's fine. But you're generating income too, right? I just don't get that, but I'm also not trying. They do that for a couple of like some festivals around that too.
That could be seats.
streets. So down Washington Avenue, exiting easily. And it's literally.
Well, first of all, take
But so there's water access from the tunnel. It's behind those. The deck should be. Yeah.
businesses. That's why I think honestly, it's been recently doing. They run late, and like people go out to park with the car and they're not driving. I don't know, some people might not like that. But yeah.
So.
Yeah, actually, I was gonna ask you. What we're talking about that. Yeah. It's the one red patio. This is all one single. Yeah. And now you can still walk up there. I've done it before, but you have to watch out because you see it coming out. It is, yeah. But high school.
Yeah.
This is also not. I just want to say that instead of stairs here, I always thought it would be really nice. Yeah. If there was, say this is a wall. There is just a long ramp. So it's like accessible.
I think it is.
I mean, like that. 5, 6 feet. And it can either be like a steel thing would be cool. It's just thicker. Yeah, just yeah.
To go back to, so that's sort of on their line. So it's just a line for the right.
Yeah, I noticed that first. I just.
Or would it be a degree?
And so this is specifically like a long trail, say, this way, to my car, this way. And then, say, so,
They're talking about doing the switch back. And I remember the CSC comments saying it should just about quite like that's very quite. But I also made comments that it seems
I drove to Australia 2 years ago, and it's just weird, because, you know, it's just always where you know, it's good, it's a big city.
well, would be you're really close to the valley.
yeah, but they don't have their own post office, right? They
It's a really nice place to
That'd be
over
down
here,
there.
right? Yeah, the sinkhole's gonna come back. Sinkhole's gonna come back. I mean, the sinkhole continues to come back, like they just like on vacation. No, I think they're doing a really good job. Keeping it coming back. Streams. There was a difference, but it's. Yeah, developers always place it into the and I think. Oh, yeah, that's there. You know what they call
I'm trying to think if there's any hard stuff that I can think of this like adjacent. Yeah, but they're all. Yeah. This. There should be a reason. No, I think if you feel that it went behind the process. And the things of interest. We start putting things there. And then there's some fountains. But you know, I go back to Dutch village
And it's just like,
because I do. It's just like.
It's a really
But I will.
So. We're identifying.
No, it's the.
You would have to.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know, so sensitive, they just dig it. You know, I think it's a better. I think that makes more sense.
Is that?
It's rare. People are just gonna continue to expand their operations. Yeah.
Oh, just the.
So.
When I first saw it, it was really high. And I was like, why did they build it like this? Because you couldn't even go over. But usually.
Yeah, we're still live streaming. We had.
It's just gonna, so that the need for grade space is just gonna continue to increase.
Yeah.
And this yellow castle is gonna eventually give it 200 years. Yeah, scary.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. It's like.
It's how. Yeah. Yeah, pretty.
I was not part of the discussion today. I just looking at this, it's just like, it's a live person. Yes, I hear me.
This, they protected for parcel. A hiking trail, build a relationship, country club, cemetery, there could be a hiking trail. Through here that people, this neighborhood could access space. Starting, I don't know exactly Greg's idea, but basically when they cross these properties somehow and get to a protected place, and we have to hike down. This is a Wilbur neighborhood, so there's some, this is a historical. And then there's other parts of some games that have just been protected by. That's something, yes, yes. They talked about.
Such a lovely little table.
One, there is on the grocery properties, there is a small. The idea is that.
The nice structure. Yeah, I tried to.
And it goes up.
Special.
Nope.
I love that.
First off, we're gonna talk about water resources.
No, I think it needs access.
Oh,
Sorry, it's only access.
it's all.
Me too. Yeah.
Okay, we were number 5, so I'm not sure what our table is water resources. And we were interested in the streams, especially the ones that are not named and you remember see them. There's one coming up along the cemetery and going into the ground. That's a good example. There's also some kind of in the first, second, and third street area. And then the ones in the Emerson Main Street, the Tannery Brook and Main Street Brook, and the fact that they go on the ground near our town plaza. And we also wanted to know the underground lake and the mines or caves down in this county. Is all water, and we didn't really have any good wetland map, little small wetland maps to know, like little tiny wetlands, but we talked a lot about the various wetlands in the Esopus floodplain, for instance. But we felt like the main ones were protecting the tidal wetlands, and we suggested that the tidal wetlands be distinguished from the non-tidal wetlands. And so the tidal wetlands are mostly at Kingston, are at Kingston Point. And allowing room for migration there, and then we felt that river access to the surface and around that were really important.
Okay. Let's go next. You guys? You have a spokesmodel?
For historic resources. Mapping pretty thorough of our known historic resources. That's where our High Street Fair thing need to be proven. Not all of the local individually designated areas are on the map, so we need to recheck that and make sure our property. Also, National Register and State Register listed property should be mapped. And then so we need to update our wish list of desired land, individual land, districts, and those need to be mapped. The Broadway Heritage Area as a historic resource. East Stadium as a historic resource. And then revisit our historic resource surveys that have been done particularly for Midtown East, Midtown West to identify resources that have been identified in the past that have not been used. That have not been taken on them. And also potential eligible properties that have already been deemed eligible for listing on the National Register by the State Historic Preservation Office. And also make sure that that's going to be done on Monkey and lower. Yeah.
All right, we had trails and parks, recreational trails and parks in Kingston. We identified a few kind of informal trails that already exist. And yeah, the big one we talked about was really commonly used pedestrian crossing train tracks between kind of Kingston High School neighborhood to Green Hill Ave. Prioritizing parcels there for pedestrian accessibility. We talked about wayfinding around the Green Line, getting more people to know where the trails are, and some potential spots where trails can be developed, and some parks and reserved lands, Wilbur and Hasbro Park. Sorry. Talking about getting a creek walk along, so there's a creek between Annenberg Plaza and so this floodplain lands up here. And I don't know exactly. It says transportation matching trails. Oh, and pedestrian corridors. So we just had a conversation about kind of transportation and like how people move around the city. Same. So yeah.
You also mentioned the wildlife corridors.
Oh yeah, we talked about corridors and marking on that as well.
So, my name is Dana, I'm one of the consultants with BN Planning. And so I was kind of floating around a little bit, but what I did see over at the general table was that someone had marked that they wanted the Peace Park to be represented. And there was a little bit of discussion about the community gardens. But I think that person maybe hopped over to that table before. And then I'm also going to try to speak for table number 1. Everybody left, so, okay, Julie has that, so, yep, thank you, it's great to meet you all.
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, so I'm serving as proxy for table 1 and table 4. First, I believe table 4 was for the back corner, We talked about, the waterfront parcels on Strand Street, protecting those from flooding. We talked about the value of preserving the Roundup Community Garden and the Liberty Street Community Garden. Also, Peace Park, if it's not an officially designated park, to make sure that this is protected. We talked about the use and protection of the intersection at Pine Road and Grant Street. And just so folks know, there's actually an RFP that's out, reviewing it and deciding this Friday on how that is going to actually move forward, so that's exciting. The preservation of the Pine Street African burial ground and the Mount Sinai Cemetery were mentioned, and the importance of adding community garden space uptown where there are gardens lacking. There was also a mention of adding bike infrastructure like sharrows or something to make sure that when you get to each of our municipal lots to connect to the Midtown Linear Park and signage to get to the Midtown Linear Park. So for table 1, which is over here, I think we go, but they didn't make it form. They talked about the waterfront at a Beale Street waste treatment site is an undesirable use. Waterfront use of Roundup are obscured. Waterfront, I'm reading this as I read it, so by the way, I shocked you about reading, and I'm not doing any, no editing. Waterfront walkability at Roundup from Hunter Street to city limit at Sotis. Roundup Community Center, the Roundup Community Center, land to support community garden. Civic properties that can support community gardens. Parcels that have a certain percentage, for example, less than 50% canopy cover, could be prioritized for street or yard trees. Vacant land within the neighborhood park priority area, prioritized for a park or green space. I think that's a designation in the open space plan. And prioritize parcels along Topsfield Road for preservation or gentle development of usable open space and access to the creek. That's those 2 things. Excellent.
Yeah.
Did you want to close out?
Okay, sure, yeah. Okay, so, thank you all for being here. Our task is to be rigorous and try to log this in and put to properties and parcels. And then, there is a online community survey, and I would ask that you advocate that be, responded to, folks that get on the Engage website, it's only a few questions, it's a few minutes, but that would be very helpful to do. And I want to thank our contributors tonight,
The survey is also printed in Spanish and English on the table, and if you are going anywhere where you think that a printed survey would be a more valuable and more accessible use of outreach, please take some. I can print many, many more if you need them, although we want to save our trees, so we don't want to print too many, but certainly not
Would it be
any.
available as a PDF that we could download to email?
Yes, yep. So if you, make sure you sign in and give me your email, or take my card and I will send you a PDF that you can print. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. And also the map app is online for folks to, and that is live, for folks to go ahead and to do that. So I also want to thank everyone, including Ian and everyone who's online and watching this in the future. You guys are fantastic, and this is the rest of your night. Thank you. Thank you.